How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. In today's video, I've got 3 topics to cover. The first one is when can you pre-order the PS5 Pro? Second on the list, did Microsoft just say we need PlayStation's money? And third, it's time to start getting ready for more 30 FPS games, and I'll tell you which one is going to be running at 30 FPS when it comes out early next year. Looking to play one of the most comprehensive vehicle combat games ever? Then this video's sponsor, War Thunder, has all you're looking for. This free-to-play game allows you to take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships of 10 major nations in epic PvP battles. Those battles range from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of today. You can play it on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation as well. War Thunder has one of the most sophisticated vehicle damage models in gaming. Every vehicle is intricately modeled down to its individual components, and all of them are susceptible to damage or disabling from enemy fire. And the various different types of armor, shells, and missiles all behave like they do in the real world. War Thunder also shows you exactly how you or your enemy gets destroyed. X-ray view shows precisely where the shell penetrated, which components were affected, and what ultimately led to the destruction of the vehicle. There's a comprehensive customization system with countless camouflages, historical markings, and decorations for all types of vehicles. War Thunder can be played by anyone. You don't need extra hardware to drive the tanks or planes, and there are game modes for everyone. So immerse yourself in the intense combat of War Thunder, where incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects place you right at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. Join the worldwide community of over 70 million players on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. Click the link in the description to get your hands on a massive bonus pack, which includes exclusive vehicle decorator, Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. This is for new customers and returning players who have not played for at least 6 months. So let's jump into this first news story here because it's pretty interesting. So we all know that the PS5 Pro is coming out later this year. It's been confirmed by the manufacturer. Sony's talked about it. Digital Foundry has the specs of the digital console that has been sent out to be used as a test console for game developers. Like, this thing is 100% happening by the end of the year. We don't know when this thing is going to finally be announced. Sony just needs to do it, in my opinion, because so much info is out there. But our best guess at this point is pre-Tokyo Game Show, which happens very early in September. So I'm assuming, and a lot of leakers and rumor spreaders out there are assuming, that by the end of August, we'll have some sort of a showcase announced by Sony that will then let us know finally when we can hear about not only the PS5 Pro, but all of these great games that we have to look forward to from the first party studios, which is awesome. But we all know from 2020 that pre-ordering anything related to the PS5 is 1,000 times more difficult than it needs to be because of scalpers out there. They basically use bots to buy up the entire stock of PlayStation 5s. Like, it would be at a point where you could buy a PS5 from like StockX or use a bot to get it from Walmart or Target, and then you could have a guy with a box truck roll up, and the box truck would be full of PlayStation 5s, and you would just get cash from him and throw your PS5 in the back. And I know that happened because I know a couple people who did it, and I was like, man, I'm glad I got a PS5 at launch, because if I had to watch someone using a bot to get PlayStation 5s and then flip them to a guy with a box truck full of them and I didn't have one, I would be livid. But sticking back in 2020, for all the people out there who didn't have a bot or didn't have a way to get a PS5, there was a guy called Matt Swider, who's a tech YouTuber who also has a Substack site called The Shortcut, and that was one of the best sources for making sure you could get a PS5 as soon as it came back in stock. If you don't know what Substack is, basically it's like a paywalled blog that a lot of journalists are using instead of writing for other publications. So it's kind of like Patreon, where if you want to hear from someone, you pay a fee and then you get to see all their blog posts, basically. So Matt was one of the biggest guys out there back in 2020 who was helping people get a PlayStation 5. And honestly, it wasn't just 2020. It went all the way into the beginning of 2023 before Sony finally figured out the stock issues with the PlayStation 5. And then they just mysteriously replaced the PlayStation 5 with the PS5 Slim at the end of the year. I was at Target yesterday. Not only did they have both models of the PS5 just sitting there on the shelf in stock, they also had PlayStation portals. So it seems like for the most part, with consoles that have been out for a little bit, Sony has fixed most, if not all, of the supply chain issues. But I'm assuming that when the PS5 Pro comes out, we're going to see a very similar situation to what we saw back in 2020, because all of those bot sites are going to reactivate. And while, you know, it's not going to be as big of a console as the PS5 was, mainly because the PS5 came out while everyone was still stuck inside, and it's still grappling with the fact that it doesn't have very many first-party games to really get people excited about upgrading hardware for, I still think the bots are going to give it their best and try and make sure that they get the PS5s all locked up before all of us normal people who just want to play games on our PS5 Pro are able to actually get one. But the reason I'm bringing all of this up and bringing up Matt is that he is kind of a good predictor at when things will start happening, like when you'll be able to pre-order the PS5 Pro, and he's guessing that right at the beginning of September is when you should start getting ready to be able to pre-order the PS5 Pro. And in this case, knowing how things went in the past with the original PS5 and everything like that, I would say if you even have a passing interest, like you're gonna wait a little bit, see if you really want the PS5 Pro, but you know you're gonna get it eventually. If you've got the means, do your best to pre-order it and get one at launch, because you don't want to end up in that situation we were in when I started this channel way back in I think 2020 or 2021, where if you wanted a PS5 and you didn't get one, you just weren't able to for the longest time, and that situation sucked. I remember getting like literally thousands of comments on every video with people complaining that they wanted to give Sony their money and Sony was totally fine just selling all of the consoles that normal people wanted to scalpers. I think his prediction's very spot on. Sony loves releasing consoles in September. Last year though, if I remember correctly, they ended up releasing the PS5 Slim with the Modern Warfare 3 bundle, the disc edition. They didn't even have the digital edition ready to go at launch. I went to GameStop and got it right when Modern Warfare 3 came out because it was bundled with Modern Warfare 3. So I would assume that they're going to announce the PS5 Pro in September, then they'll open the pre-orders pretty quickly after that, like definitely not the night that they announce it. It'll be within a few days, and then you'll be able to go to Amazon, Best Buy, or PlayStation Direct to get your PS5 Pro. I'd just be happy to know that in November, when it does finally release, you'll have it showing up at your door, which is what you want. You don't want to have to pay StockX prices, because if this thing comes out and it's $500 or $600, get ready to start paying $1,000 for at least the first couple months that it's out. I'll tell you my trick that's worked with not only the PS4, but the PS5. It worked with the Xbox Series X and it worked with the Nintendo Switch. It's been foolproof up until now. All I do is follow Wario64, and then before the pre-order goes live, Amazon will create the link for the PS5 or the PS5 Pro, and he'll find that link and tweet it out. So all you have to do is bookmark that. Make sure you have a timer set for when the pre-order is supposed to be opened up, but start refreshing that link about 10 to 15 minutes before, because every single time they've done a pre-order for a new console in the first one, they've launched early. So people who show up right at the moment that it's supposed to unlock, they're always disappointed to find that they're already sold out, like the pre-orders allotments or whatever you want to call it. And like I mentioned, this has worked for me every single time. I just show up about 15 minutes early, and I'd say about within 3 minutes of the specified time is when it opens up. I never have any checkout problems. I just hit the button on my phone, add it to my cart. And this is really important. Make sure you have your default credit card set to be the one that you want to purchase the PS5 with. I remember with the PS4, I used a credit card. I had the PlayStation credit card. I pre-ordered it with that, and then I traded in stuff at GameStop, and then I would get store credit for Amazon, because you could get Amazon gift cards at GameStop, and then I would apply those gift cards to the pre-order, and then when the thing finally shipped, I only ended up having to put like $50 on the credit card, and I just paid that off at the end of the month. So you need to make sure that whatever card you want to use for the pre-order is the one that's loaded in when you do the pre-order, because if you change the credit card once you've already pre-ordered the console, I've seen this happen to a lot of people where it'll either cancel their pre-order entirely or bump their shipment down to the bottom of the list. So a lot of people who showed up on day one when you could pre-order a PS5, who theoretically got in the first batch, they were bumped down so far that they ended up having to wait almost a week to get their actual PS5. So my step-by-step guide for getting a PS5 Pro is very simple. So all you have to do first, make sure you go check out Wario64. If you like getting deals in your Twitter feed, just make sure you follow him. Whenever Sony announces the PS5 Pro and the pre-order date, that's when you want to turn on notifications for Wario64. It's going to be annoying for a couple of days because it's like basically a bot account that tweets out 1,000 things a day, but it's worth it in this case. And then look for him to tweet out that link to the dummy page on Amazon. Make sure you save it, keep it in a tab on your browser, on your phone, or on your computer, or wherever. Just make sure it's saved. And then on the date that you're going to pre-order the PS5 Pro, show up 15 minutes early and just start spamming refresh until you see that pre-order transaction button turn on. And then most importantly, again, make sure the default card on Amazon is the one that you want to purchase your PS5 Pro with. If you do that, I'm not going to guarantee you'll get one, but like I've said, this worked for me with the PS4, it worked for me with the Nintendo Switch, it worked for me with the PS5, and it worked for me with the Series X. Every single time I got it in the first pre-order. And when I got my PS5, it was a crazy situation because I was on a plane. I was flying back to LA from Michigan because we had just shot my Happy Halloween Halloween short film, which is amazing, by the way. You should check it out. It's over on my channel, Jimmy Champagne. And the plane was literally like speeding up on the runway at the specified moment, but because the pre-order link went live a little bit early, I was able to get it with my last bar of service and everything went through just fine. So it's a tried and true system. It actually works. I hope it works out for you whenever the pre-orders go live. Anyway, that brings us to the second news story here, which is that Phil Spencer just admitted they need PlayStation's money to make sure that Xbox stays a viable business. So I'm sure you saw all the news and everything from Gamescom. There really wasn't that much in terms of awesome games to look forward to, but right at the very end, they not only announced the release date for Xbox for Indiana Jones, but right at the very last second, they said it's coming to PS5 in spring 2025, which is cool. Obviously, and totally rightfully so, in my opinion, Xbox fans were pissed. They were like, hey, Phil Spencer said back when they announced these 4 games that were coming to PS5, that Indiana Jones and Starfield was not one of those games. And here we are less than a year later, because this happened in April, and now Indiana Jones is coming to PS5. So people are like, what gives? A lot of interviewers started asking him questions about it, and this is what he had to say. Last spring, we launched 4 games on PlayStation, and we said we were going to learn. I think at the showcase, I might have said that from our learning, we're going to do more. And when it comes to those 4 games, he said that they made Xbox's franchises stronger. I saw Sea of Thieves sold around 1 million copies on PS5, so clearly that game got a huge boost in players. And then he said it's definitely true inside of Microsoft that the bar is high for us in terms of delivery, that we have to give back to the company. And that's the key line there, because he's basically saying that with Game Pass, all they've done is really train their audience to expect free games, which I really can't fault people for on the Xbox side, because Xbox for the better part of a decade at this point has been beating their fans over the head with all you have to do is pay $18 a month for Game Pass Ultimate and you can play every first party game for free day one on Xbox. So if you train your audience that way, not only does it make them expect to get games for free, but it also cheapens the quality of your games from their perspective overall, because if you're getting something for free instead of paying $70 for it, you're immediately going to bounce out of it if you don't like it in the first 5 minutes. You're going to try out a bunch of stuff. It's just going to make games feel cheap and disposable, kind of like Netflix did with movies and TV shows. You know, you have to make sure that even though you have these games coming out and coming to Game Pass, on the other hand, that you have games that people want to buy off the service so you can keep the value of games higher. Obviously, Game Pass isn't making enough money because it hit a concrete ceiling very quickly in terms of subscribers. It's been at like 34 million for over a year now. Like, they get people in, but they also lose people at the same rate. So it stayed stuck at around 34 or 35 million people. And that's not enough money to recoup the budgets or the purchasing costs of these games that they want to put on the service. So they pivoted and started this new service of Game Pass where it's cheaper, but you don't get every game on launch. That didn't make enough money. So they've been really trying to incentivize people to just buy games for the Xbox, but they spent the last 5 years training them not to. So the only thing they really had left as an option was to release games on PlayStation, where these games can't really end up on PlayStation Plus or be given away for free, because Sony very smartly has only put one relatively new game on PS Plus Extra, which was Horizon Forbidden West. They saw that it absolutely cratered the sales of that game, so they never did it again. Now they're being much more careful about what stuff ends up on the service, because they want to make sure that it's games that people aren't regularly buying anymore, because subscription services just can't make enough money to recoup hundreds of millions of dollars, which is the budgets of games at this point. And dropping that line that they have to give back to Microsoft, I completely get why Microsoft is pissed at Xbox. They've been dumping millions and millions, even billions of dollars into this company forever now, and they haven't seen a return on investment. I like Phil Spencer. I've met him a few times. I've had lunch with him. I thought he was a cool guy, but I really don't like the fallout effects of how they treat the industry, because all they're doing is just throwing money around to try and strong arm companies like PlayStation and Nintendo into doing exactly what they're doing. They always have this rhetoric like, oh, the industry is changing before us. And it's not just magically changing. It's changing because of Xbox's mistakes, making things like Game Pass, trying to make everything a subscription service. The only reason we have 3 expensive ass PS Plus tiers is because Xbox forced Sony to do it, and their investors were like, hey, Xbox seems to be making money on this. We need to have something to counter it. So they wasted all this time and energy making 3 expensive tiers of PS Plus instead of keeping it the good service that it already was at $60 a year. Like, I'd be much happier to pay $80 a year for PS Plus if I knew it wasn't just to subplant how much money they wasted making these other tiers with extra and premium. It was just a total waste of time and money. Anyway, that brings us to the third news story here, which is that it's time to get ready for more 30 FPS best games. We're finally getting next-gen games, beginning with Monster Hunter Wilds next year. That game's only coming to next-gen consoles, which is great, but there's a demo available on the Gamescom show floor, and reports from Gamescom are saying that it's running at a rock-solid 30 FPS. And honestly, I see a lot of people saying that Resident Evil's RE engine, which is the engine that every Capcom game is built on now, has shown to run at 60 FPS in the past, but they upgraded that engine this year to a next-gen version, and as we've seen with games like Dragon's Dogma 2, it does not translate very well to an open world setting. Dragon's Dogma 2 has major performance problems that are all CPU based, and really what that comes down to is generating a lot of NPCs. You know why you don't really have those problems in games like Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake? It's because those games are corridor based. They're really linear single player games where the most enemies you're fighting at any given time are like 3 or 4. I mean, like in terms of friendly NPCs, there's only a few in the game, so that doesn't hammer the CPU as hard as, say, a city in Dragon's Dogma 2. Monster Hunter Wilds, on the other hand, I don't think is going to be that technically intensive compared to Dragon's Dogma, because there aren't a lot of like friendly NPCs and you are fighting less monsters than you are in something like Dragon's Dogma 2, but still, when you upgrade an engine to a next-gen engine, it makes sense that a game is going to drop to 30 FPS on a next-gen console. Thank you again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description to grab your massive bonus pack, available to new and returning players on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation.